Okay, so I still remember seeing the reviews for Demon Souls in a magazine years ago and thinking, finally, someone is going back to making games that are trying to beat you, not playable stories that want you to complete them. Unfortunately, though, I had a 360 and Demon Souls was PS3 exclusive, so I never did play it. Then life happened, and FromSoft continued to pump out games that would eventually be considered their own genre. And with each title, I felt more discouraged from starting, because I was so far behind by this point. Well, I did it. I finally broke that trend and played a FromSoft game. Well, that's a semi-truth. Years ago, my brother gave me access to his Steam account to try out Dark Souls, but I couldn't get a controller to work, and it was unplayable on the keyboard. And I think that controller problem led to me unintentionally holding a grudge against FromSoft games that I never fully materialized until making this review. But that's enough personal backstory. We're here to talk about Elden Ring, which I can sum up in one word: punishing. But you knew that going into a Soulsborne review. While it was impossible to miss the gossip when this game was launched about what the Tree Sentinel was going to do to me as soon as I walked out into the world, that didn't change the fact that I had to try the fight anyway. And then try it again. And again. I like to think that I am stubborn enough to do the fight as many times as it would take to finish him, but I already knew this was Elden Ring's welcome mat, except it was telling you to piss off. And with an open world to explore, beating my head against the first thing I could fight would have been a waste with so much else around me. And that world is absolutely gorgeous. I found myself regularly stopping just to look around and take in the world momentarily. Each biome had such a feel, or an aesthetic to it, that warrants stopping and just taking it all in. Dilapidated, yet towering castles. Glowing, ethereal underground nature, with a night sky. A vast, war-torn, rotted expanse. Secluded arcane universities, locked off from the outside world. While many of these areas weren't exactly welcoming, that doesn't change the appreciation for the work put into crafting so many different environments. And while sure, we've seen most of these landscapes plenty of times in our fantasy gaming, that doesn't change the top quality that was put into these interpretations. And just as how I stopped to take in the beauty of the world, the enemies and creatures were exactly the opposite. Not opposite in quality, but opposite in how uneasy and unnerving so many of these designs were, and the panic I felt in my initial fights with many of them. I'm going to paraphrase here, but I had a verbal exclamation of, "Wait, T-Rex dogs? God, they hit hard. Man, are those things disturbing." Followed just a few moments later by, "Oh God, the birds! Why do they have such long legs?" There were so many first fights that I had thinking afterwards, and this is just going to be a normal enemy going forward, and here I am struggling to beat it once? And I have to admit, even as I became more accustomed to enemies, I would still get killed by the most unthreatening of them, because I was either playing too dismissively or too recklessly, or end up in the infamous panic roll death spiral, where I'd mistime a roll, get hit, panic and roll again, but repeatedly keep rolling into more attacks. Then there's all the equipment to be found. Every time I would find something new, I'd ask myself, are you sure about your weapon choice? Are you sure a spear is cooler than a big ol' sword? Or axe? Or hammer that looks like it is literally a massive brick stolen from a castle's wall tied to a stick? Or are you sure you don't want a faster weapon? Or one with better reach? Or with a different effect? Simply put, I found myself wanting to make about 10 character alts, just so I could try different playstyles. And that isn't even getting into all the different spells and incantations, just to obfuscate these choices even further. As if picking between weapons wasn't enough, the spell choices for playing a pure magic build are also numerous enough mixing and matching to create your own custom loadouts. And we aren't even going to get into hybrid builds. But as fun as all these weapons are, I've got to bring up bows. Why were they forgotten through all of these crazy weapon and spell ideas? I feel like bows are all trade-offs compared to their counterparts. Their damage is low compared to most attacks and spells. The arrows have fall-off damage. Enemies that are aware of incoming shots will dodge them, or use their shield to negate most of the damage. Their attack speed is fairly slow, making it hard to stack status effects, while also having low stance breaking. And you either have to farm crafting materials for ammo that drop in small quantities, which will take up large amounts of time, or buying arrows that could or should have the runes going towards leveling. Now I know I have a bias because bows are normally my favorite weapon in RPGs, but I am really having a hard time figuring out an area they excel, especially compared to their counterparts. Am I missing something that makes bows stand out? Now, let's talk boss difficulty. First off, I'm not saying this game is GG easy, but I was surprised with how many different tools given to customize the game to your difficulty tolerance. I really expected to be rolled by just about every boss I encountered. And while there were definitely some that made me work for it, I was still surprised with how many one-shots or two-shots I had. As someone that likes wandering around open worlds aimlessly early on in games, and just taking it in, I felt like because of this, I severely overleveled a lot of the content early on, which made some of the fights pushovers. Then there is the whole summon system that could absolutely trivialize fights. For example, Blythe dominates Darewill, to the point where he basically wins the fight without intervention. Or there was another boss's second phase that I made pretty trivial because my archer summons interrupted many of their spellcasts. Admittingly, I am trying to decide how I feel about this. On one hand, I want people to enjoy playing a game how they want. I mean, I killed a world boss with fire pots, running away and de-aggroing so I could craft more, repeating till I defeated it, so I am not above using super secret ancient art of war tactics to win. But I can't help but feel I cheapen some fights by keeping a boss preoccupied with my summons. The problem I'm running into is deciding what level of aid is acceptable, not for gamer cred or bragging rights, but as to not rob myself the enjoyment of earning victories against a tough foe. Even the difference in knowing how to approach the tree sentinel on my second character made him one-shottable, something that took hours of attempts on my first character. Another thing that stood out to me was the clunkiness of combat. For me, the amount of commitment needed for every attack you make, due to the startup and recovery of attacks, definitely takes some time to get used to. Now I get that some weapons need to have that heft or weightiness to them, and that is the trade-off for the additional benefits. But I also felt like my dude was in quicksand while fighting, compared to some enemies that had far more fluid movement. The amount of whiffed attacks, because I misjudged range, and couldn't coax my character into moving just half a step forward to swing or stab, or even throw a spell at the enemy, could feel quite defeating. Then there was the times I went to swing, and realized a hit wasn't going to connect before the opponents, and there was nothing I could do but just watch the inevitable conclusion. Or even worse, starting up an attack on a boss, just to watch their move come out quicker. Of course, some of this problem is my own fault for using heavier or bigger weapons, but when I tried using lighter weapons, I faced another problem. Getting enemies to flinch, or getting stance breaks felt much rarer, and would require more openings and attacks to get the job done. Or maybe I should word it like this: the more openings that I am required to defeat an enemy, the more chances for me to make a mistake. I can't get over the obscurity of information in this game either. I am coming to understand that this is par for the course with FromSoft, but still, I've never been the biggest fan of needing to keep a wiki open for just simply playing a game. While I tried to go into my first Elden Ring playthrough blind, it wasn't long before I found myself constantly looking up information, before even getting out of Limgrave. And I'm not even referring to a completionist level. I wouldn't have been able to progress the story without looking up where to get key items, because I didn't talk to the right person at the right time, or accidentally wander into it. And I'll admit, this is less of a complaint and more first world problems, but I'm already 65 hours into my mains playthrough, and it appears I am only halfway through the game. While I'm blown away with how much content is in this game, I am also blown away with how much content is in this game. One playthrough is going to take me more time than I spend on 95% of other games. And while I'm not in a rush to finish Elden Ring, this game is almost feeling like a second job with how much time I am putting into it. From a bang for your buck perspective, this is absolutely crazy what you're getting with Elden Ring. But I also have a backlog of other games I need to play, which aren't getting attention because of this game. And I can easily see Elden Ring being quite the undertaking for someone with limited free time, only able to get maybe an hour or two towards it at any given moment. Overall though, this truly is an epic game. There are so many weapons and spells to find, areas to explore, and bosses to beat. Simply put, yes, I recommend this game, and I almost can't recommend it enough. While there are definitely tough moments, if you can muster through, the satisfaction is some of the best in gaming. I almost can't believe it, but Elden Ring really has lived up to the hype. If you have the time and patience, Elden Ring's gaming experience is something you don't want to miss out on. Thanks for watching.